A poor black waitress helped an old man in the rain. But what happened the next morning shattered her world. Denise Carter showed up to work, soaking wet and 5 minutes late, only to be fired in front of a crowd that watched in silence. Little did she know that the stranger she'd saved that night was also watching, and the moment he steps foot inside the diner, every cruel word from his manager will come back to haunt him. Before we continue, we'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now, let's get started. The storm was relentless that night, pounding the windshield as if trying to push her off the road. Denise Carter gripped the steering wheel of her old white pickup, the windshield wipers scraping furiously to keep a glimmer of vision ahead. The diner had closed late, and she was bone-tired, her gray uniform still damp from a spilled pot of coffee hours earlier. All she wanted was warmth and silence. Then she saw it, a black luxury sedan, parked crookedly on the side of the road. The hazard lights flickered weakly through the downpour. The hood was open, steam rising in thin, desperate tendrils. As she slowed, her headlights caught the silhouette of an older white man standing next to the car, his coat soaked, one hand on the fender for balance. No umbrella, no help, just a soaked suit and a tired face staring into the rain. She hesitated. It was late at night, the kind of night that taught people to mind their own business. But she saw how his shoulders trembled, how his fingers struggled to hold the phone, which clearly had no signal here. Denise sighed, stopped, and rolled down the window halfway. The smell of wet asphalt and motor oil filled the cabin. "Are you okay?" she called, her voice cutting through the storm. The man turned, startled, squinting through the rain. "My car broke down. The tow trucks aren't responding. I think I took a wrong turn." Denise reached out, opened the passenger door, and leaned toward the window. "You'll freeze in here. Get in before you drown." He hesitated, studying her, a stranger offering help on an empty road. Then he nodded, opened the door, and slid inside, dripping water onto the worn seat. The heater was barely working, but she turned up anyway. The hum filled the silence as they slowly pulled away. His voice was quiet, but grateful. "You didn't have to stop." Denise shrugged. "I guess you did. I can't leave someone's grandfather to melt in the rain." This elicited the faintest of laughter. He introduced himself as Henry Weston. He said he was driving back from a late meeting outside the city. A storm had caught him halfway, and soon after, his car gave up. Denise listened but didn't ask questions. She simply drove, her headlights skimming the wet trees, the steady rhythm of the rain falling heavily on the roof. She drove him to her neighborhood, a row of narrow apartment buildings shaded by flickering streetlights. Inside her small one-room apartment, she handed him a towel and a warm cup of instant soup. The radiator clicked faintly. She gave him her only blanket, ignoring his protests. When he finally fell asleep on her couch, she sat quietly by the window, watching the rain slow to a drizzle. Her reflection looked tired but calm. She had done the right thing. Before dawn, she had left for work. The couch was empty. The blanket was neatly folded. A note lay on the table. "Thank you for seeing me as a person." She smiled faintly, tucked the note into her pocket, and stepped back out into the gray morning. The streets were slippery, the air sharp. She didn't yet know that the man she'd helped would re-enter her life, and that his next visit would change everything. The morning dragged on, gray and cold. Denise's shoes creaked on the diner floor as she burst through the door 10 minutes late. Her hair was still damp, her breath quick from sprinting up the hill. The smell of fried bacon and cheap coffee hit her like a wall. Behind the counter, Steve Harlow was already barking orders. Sleeves rolled up, voice loud enough for customers to hear. "Carter, do you think time been for you?" His tone dripped with disdain. Denise caught her breath, her eyes downcast. "Excuse me, sir. Keep that," he snapped, slamming the receipt book down on the counter. "We have a busy morning. The owner is arriving, and you walking like you're doing us a favor." Several customers turned their heads. The young cook stood frozen over the grill. The clatter of dishes died down. The tension in the room was thick enough to taste. Denise tried again, softly, calmly. I had to help someone. An older man broke down in the storm. I couldn't just... Steve cut her off with a wave of his hand. You think good deeds pay the rent? You're late. That's all that matters. He turned to crowd, his voice rising. If any of you want to be late too, maybe join her outside the door. A few people chuckled under their breath. Others looked away. Denise's chest tightened. Please, Mr. Harlow. I've been here for 4 years. You know I'm not. He pointed to the door. You're fired. Give me your apron. I don't need excuses. I need reliability. Silence. Even the friar seemed to have stopped gurgling. Denise untied her apron, her hand shaking, her jaw tense. She carefully placed it on the counter, refusing to let him see it break. As she turned to the door, the woman in the booth whispered to her friend, Poor thing. She's the sweetest one here. Denise stepped out into the drizzle. The bell above the door tinkled for the last time. The rain was softer now, but stung worse than last night. She pulled her coat tighter around her and kept walking. Behind her, inside the diner, Steve grinned and straightened his tie. Perfect timing, he murmured. The owner is finally arriving today. The last thing I need is charity cases making the place look sloppy. Outside, Denise paused on the corner, her reflection faint in the puddle at her feet. She'd done the right thing. She was sure of it, but being right didn't pay the bills. She didn't notice the black sedan slowly driving past the diner. Its tinted window rolled down just a bit. Inside, Henry Weston watched her leave, his face unreadable, the same note she'd given him lying on the passenger seat next to him. He straightened his tie, looked back at the diner sign, shimmering in the rain, and said quietly to himself, So this is where she works. He stepped on the gas. What happened next rewrote both their lives. By midday, the diner was buzzing with energy. The rain had stopped, and sunlight poured through the windows. The smell of coffee and fresh pie filled the air. Steve Harlow stood at the counter, straightening the napkin holders for the 5th time. He was restless, his nerves hidden behind a false confidence. The staff whispered. No one had ever met the elusive owner, and today was that day. At precisely 12:30, the door opened. The bell rang once. A tall, gray-haired man walked inside, dressed in a dark, tailored coat, polished shoes, and a composure that calmed the entire room. His presence was calm yet commanding, the kind that made people sit up straight without knowing why. The cook stopped mid-turn near the grill. The waitress paused, coffee pot half lifted. Steve hurried forward, a salesman's smile plastered on his face. Mr. Weston. Welcome, sir, Steve said, his voice high and forced with warmth. Everything is working perfectly. Clean, efficient, just the way you like it. Henry Weston surveyed the diner. His eyes swept over the booths, the counter, the polished chrome, the staff trying not to stare. But when he saw the empty corner where Denise used to work, his jaw tensed slightly. Where's the young woman from last night? He asked, his voice even. Steve blinked. Excuse me, sir. Denise Carter, Weston said again. The waitress who worked here yesterday morning. The manager gave a tight laugh. Oh, her. I had to fire her, I'm afraid. Always late. Bad attitude. Not the image you want for your business. Weston's expression didn't change, but the silence that followed cut to the chatter like a blade. He turned to the cook. Is that true? The cook looked at his shoes. No, sir. Denise was the best of us. Steve's smile faltered. People like to exaggerate. I run things strictly here. Weston stepped closer. You fired her this morning? Yes, sir. For what reason? Weston nodded slowly. Then he said, Call her back. Immediately. The color drained from Steve's face. Sir, that won't be necessary. I said, call her back, Weston repeated. The room fell silent. 5 minutes later, the bell above the door rang again. Denise walked inside, still in her rumpled uniform, confusion etched on her face. Every head turned as she entered, unsure why she had been summoned. Weston's eyes softened when he saw her. Miss Carter, he said, his voice firm but warm. You helped me last night when no one else would. You didn't know who I was, and you didn't care. You simply saw someone in need. A murmur swept through the diner. The cook dropped his spatula. The waitress gasped. Weston continued, "You've shown me what this place should represent. So I make it official. Denise Carter is reinstated as co-manager, effective immediately." Steve's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." I am very serious," Weston interrupted. "You wanted to impress me, Mr. Harlow. Congratulations. You just did it the wrong way." The staff quietly applauded, relief filling the room. Denise stood silent, tears teetering on the brink. Weston smiled faintly. "You gave me kindness in the rain. I intend to return it with respect." The bell above the door rang again as customers entered, unaware they were entering a diner that had just changed forever. Weeks later, the diner was alive again. Mornings buzzed with regulars. Coffee flowed steadily, and laughter returned to the booths. Under Denise's quiet leadership, everything ran smoother than ever. Tips increased. Customers lingered longer, and Weston's visits became less about supervision and more about pride. But not everyone shared this pride. Steve Harlow's smile grew hollow. He was now working the register. No longer the boss, just another employee, reporting to the woman he had once humiliated. Every time she passed by, polite and unperturbed, something darker grew behind his calm expression. He stayed up late past his watch, pacing the kitchen, muttering. Then the missing money arrived. At first, it was small. 50 here, 70 there. Denise caught it during her nightly counting. She checked twice, then 3 times. No mistakes. She didn't blame anyone, but a worry settled deep in her stomach. When it happened again, she went straight to Weston. "I checked every register myself," she said. "This is deliberate. Someone is trying to make it look like I'm stealing." Weston studied her face. "Do you have any clues?" "Not one I can prove," she said. He nodded. "Then we'll find proof." That evening, hidden cameras were installed near the counters. Weston brought in a quiet man in casual clothes, a private investigator. No one in the diner knew except him and Denise. Days passed. Denise worked as usual, smiling through her anxiety. Steve kept to himself, but his eyes lingered too long on the drawer she was using. Then one Tuesday evening, as the rain returned outside, the camera caught it. Steve waited until Denise left early to handle a delivery. He opened her register, pulled out a wad of bills, then replaced her tally slip with his own. He even smiled, whispering, "We'll see how you get out of this." The next morning, Weston called a full staff meeting. Everyone gathered around the counter, confused. The investigator placed a small laptop on the table and pressed play. The recording began. The silence was brutal. Steve's hand, the money, the smirk, everything. He paled. "That's redacted," he shouted. "She setting me up?" Denise didn't move. Weston's voice cut through the noise, calm but cold. "You framed the only person who saved me. You tried to ruin her reputation in my business. I built this place on trust, and you let it rot." 2 officers entered quietly. Handcuffs clicked shut before Steve could utter another word. He cursed as they let him out, but no one looked up. The rest of the day, the diner remained strangely quiet. Denise worked her shift as usual, polite but distant. When Weston approached later that night, he said quietly, "You handled it with dignity." Most people would have screamed. She smiled weakly. "I learned something that night in the rain. Some storms you weather, others pass." The neon sign flickered against the wet glass outside. This time, its reflection looked clearer. 6 months later, the diner looked nothing like the one Denise had been fired from. The windows sparkled. A new sign above the door read "Rainy Day," and every seat was filled. People came not just for the food, but for the story, the one about the waitress who helped a stranger and changed both their lives. Inside, the air was warm, filled with laughter and the smell of fresh coffee. Denise moved effortlessly around the room, tablet in hand, offering a smile to everyone she passed. The staff worked smoothly under her leadership, proud to be part of something built on respect, not fear. Weston sat in his usual corner booth, quietly watching her work. The press had written about her months ago, calling her the heart of the diner's revival. When a local reporter asked what had compelled him to give her half ownership, he said only, "She gave me kindness when she had nothing. That's worth more than profit." That night, he stood up and called everyone to attention. "We built this place on compassion," he said. "Denise reminded us what that means. Today, I'm making it official. She's no longer just my co-manager. She's my partner." The staff burst into applause. Denise covered her face for a moment, overcome. Weston handed her an envelope containing the legal documents establishing a full partnership. "You deserve every bit of this," he said. Later, when the lights dimmed and the last customers had left, Denise stepped outside for some air. Across the street, beneath the neon glow of a car wash sign, a familiar figure was washing a windshield. Steve Harlow, his shoulders hunched, his uniform damp with fog. For a long moment, she simply watched him. Then she crossed the street, calm and collected. He froze as she stopped beside him. Without a word, she handed him a sealed envelope. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low. "Your name is on it," she said. "Open it when you're ready." She turned and walked away. When he finally tore it open, he found a small check made out to a local charity and a donation receipt in his name. Beneath it, a handwritten note. "Everyone deserves a second chance. I had mine." Back at the diner, Denise flipped the sign from closed to open. Morning light crept through the glass, reflecting off the polished counter. She tied her apron, her movements calm and confident. The first customer entered, shaking the rain off his coat. Denise smiled softly. "Good morning," she said. "Welcome to Rainy Day Diner, where kindness is always on the menu."